Good evening and welcome. I'm Dean Kimberly Durham from the Fischler College of Education and School of Criminal Justice. I'm happy that you could join us tonight for our webinar, Rounding the Corner, the Future of K-12 Education Post-COVID. I'm sure that we're all aware and we've been a part of the difficult and challenging year now, almost year and a half that we've been through, where a lot of our school-aged children have been going virtual in their schooling. It's been difficult for the students, our teachers, and the parents. At the college, we've been trying to address all of these areas and trying to come up with all kinds of ways that we could help out, even post-COVID. As we're looking forward to the fall, I know that a lot of children will be going back to school and teachers will be challenged even more, I'm sure. So tonight's panelists are our experts, but also our college family. And I'm going to turn it over at this point to our Associate Dean, Dr. Dana Mills, to introduce our panelists. I hope you have a wonderful evening and enjoy the webinar. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dean Durham, and thank you for all in attendance tonight. As Dean Durham said, this is really quite an exciting event for us this evening. I think you'll see very quickly here that the panelists that we've assembled are quite an impressive group. They're incredibly busy. I certainly want to extend our appreciation to them for literally donating their time this evening to talk about this important issue. When we reached out to each individual on this panel, none of them hesitated to take part in this conversation that we intend to have tonight because they know how important it is that we start to think past this crisis mode that we've been in for the last 12 months and really start moving very aggressively and trying to figure out how we can readapt and readjust the classroom space in order to best serve our kids in the entire K-12 system. So it's certainly something that is on the minds of all educators, even in higher ed. It's something that we see as a priority and something that we need to be paying a lot of attention to. So this is the first conversation of a few that we'll have over the next few months, where we will start to develop plans and strategies for best attacking schools in the upcoming school year. So for some of you, it may, if you're involved in K-12 education, to start thinking about going back to school in the fall when we're wrapping up, I know is a real challenge, but the reality of the situation is we just don't have time to waste, and we really need to move aggressively on this, as anybody who's in attendance tonight certainly understands. And again, we appreciate your attendance. So before we get started, I did want to just do a quick introduction of the panel. We have Dr. Norris Price, Superintendent of Baldwin County Schools in Georgia. We have Dr. Diana Green, Superintendent of Duval County Public Schools. They're very excited in Duval for the NFL draft tonight. We have Dr. Jody Marshall, who's the Senior Vice President of Learning Services at Stride, a learning company. We have Mr. Russell Schwartz, Principal in Broward County Public Schools, and Dr. Simone Lewis, teacher here in Broward County at Summit Academy Charter School. So we're going to jump right in, just a quick layout of what the evening is going to look like. I've prepared some questions for this evening for our panelists. This is going to be an informal conversation. This is nobody's really prepared notes or anything like that. We have the experts here. They're living and breathing this information, so they're very anxious to discuss the challenges that they see and some of the solutions that they have for dealing with this upcoming school year. You'll see that we'll ask some questions about students specifically, the school itself, parents, and maybe even some questions on getting the community involved and taking care of our kids. I actually do have a few questions that were already sent in from people that are in attendance tonight that had sent those questions in earlier. We'll get to those. And as time permits, we'll try to open it up to additional questions before the evening is over. So I have a feeling when we met and discussed this session with the panel, we all agreed that we could probably go on for about 2 weeks with information. We're going to keep it to about an hour this evening. So we're just going to scratch the surface of this topic. But certainly we are confident that everybody in attendance will walk away with certainly some optimism. And if nothing else, a feeling of the fact that you're not alone in this process of trying to figure out how we're going to move forward in the future, and that there's a tremendous support network both here at the Fischler College of Education in human services and beyond that, and really the community that we extend to throughout the state of Florida and all over the country. So to jump right in here, I'll start off with directing this question to Dr. Green to answer first, and then the other panelists will jump in. But one of the biggest issues that we're dealing with in this post-COVID period is the fact that learning and development has been interrupted for literally millions of kids, not only in the United States, but across the globe. The reduced learning time has resulted in some learning deficits. And in fact, there's data from the Brookings Institute that estimates that math achievement, for example, has seen about a 10% or 10 percentile point decrease from 2019 scores to 2020. So the question is, what can administrators and teachers do to one, make an assessment of that impact, right? So at the local level, to try to figure out, well, how are our students affected in our local classroom, school building or school district? And then what can we do to try to remedy or fix that so that we get students back up to speed and having the ability to be able to get back on track very quickly?
Well, first of all, thank you again for having me here this evening. Because Florida and Georgia started back to school in August, our students, and for Duval, the vast majority of our students are in brick and mortar. We started the year about 70% of our students in brick and mortar and 30% of our students still learning remotely. Today, that number is about at 85% of our students are in brick and mortar. So we did a diagnostic about 3 weeks into the school year to find out what was the depth and breadth of learning loss for our students. And just like you stated, nationally, it's about 10%. We saw the same thing, about 10% decrease from the performance of our students that took the assessment in 2018-19 to that diagnostic. We took the approach of more of an accelerated model. We did not spend a lot of time on remediation. And when we did, it was done in a scaffolding method. We tried to always tie it back to the standards that our students were going to have to show mastery at the end of the school year. And so many of our schools, we put together what we call a 4-step plan for each school. We identified, here are the standards that the vast majority of your students are struggling. And here's the plan on how we will address those standards. And at the same time, it must be aligned to our scope and sequence of curriculum for the current year. And so teachers were able to do what we call these mini checks. We would go back and how are students doing on these standards? And we are very pleased that we started about 10% below where we were last year. And we think we've actually cut that in half to about 5% by utilizing more of an acceleration model. Let's not go back and try to do what we call traditionally remediation, but more of, yes, we know these things, these are gaps, here's how we fill in the gaps, and then let's check if we see that the gap has been filled, make sure we continue moving forward. And we have what we call PMAs, and those performance measurements were done every quarter. And it allowed us to see, yes, not only are we closing the gaps, but they are making progress on their grade level standards that they'll have to show mastery at the end of the school year.
So it sounds like it's the approach that you took in Duval County was almost a recalibration, right? A kind of understanding, and it seems not to put words in your mouth, but kind of the way that I'm reading it, it's almost as if you said, look, we're not going to make up that 10% that rapidly. We're going to have to kind of recalibrate. We're seeing gains. We're moving in that right direction, and we know that we'll be back on track, as we continue to move forward. Would you say that that's kind of an accurate way to view it?
Yes, I would say that would be an accurate way, but we also maintain the consistency of we still are going to teach grade level standards, And yes, we know that there are some students who have these gaps. We supported those students through this process that we call 4-step. And we saw these students closing those gaps a lot quicker. And now, like I said, we're about down to about 5% from where we were in 2018-19.
Great. So I know, Dr. Price, I know in Georgia, the situation was a little different in that your downtime was much reduced. I'm assuming that created some stress and anxiety when we were in that period of not knowing. But I'm curious as to how you handled that situation in Baldwin County, if your approach was similar to Dr. Green's, or if the situation wasn't as dire. I know that your county is relatively small compared to Dr. Green. So I'm curious, in that rural environment, I'm sure there are other obstacles that you're dealing with there. So talk to us a little bit about the strategies that you've been implementing. You're still on mute, Dr. Price.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the panel this evening. Like Dr. Green, we also started in August. So we started mid-August with 40% of our students coming for in-person instruction. We gave our parents a choice, and 60% learning from home. So we used the MAP assessment, which is the measures of academic progress. It is a assessment that measures growth. We administer that 3 times a year. So we continue to do that this year. However, we believe that the students that we assessed online who were learning from home virtually, that data is not accurate. That has presented some challenges for us. The students that have been with us in person, we've been able to track their growth in the fall, winter, and now in the spring. And we believe that that is truly data that we can use to inform instruction. However, based on the data we had, we also used it to make sure that we were looking at what they needed to master as far as the standards, and then developed a plan of action for how we were going to address the gaps. I can tell you that it was very difficult trying to do that with the students that were learning from home. However, mid-year, we gave students the opportunity to come back, so it flipped. 40% ended up being virtual and 60% were in school. So that's what we currently have. We actually are administering the state assessment this week and next week. We were required to do it, although we were not in favor of doing that, but we were required to do it. So we will see how our students compare with our growth assessment versus the state assessment. But we're very proud of the work that we've been able to do. I can tell you that the kids that have support at home have done well, and those kids that did not because their parents were working or they didn't know how to manage the technology, we're not seeing great progress with those students. So there is a gap that we know we're going to have to address come next school year.
So for Mr. Schwartz, Dr. Price kind of started to talk a little bit about this position that schools were put in, where there was a tremendous amount of pressure from both state and federal government to move forward with assessment, and it doesn't appear as though there was a lot of consultation with the education community in that regard. I'm curious, how I know here in Florida, our standardized testing was a week or so ago. So talk to me a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced in that standardized testing process, and what are you going to do? How are you going to view those test results, and what are you going to do to try to adjust for this unorthodox school year?
Right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate being included on this panel. I am in Broward County, Florida. My school is actually Nova Blanche Forman, and it's actually pretty much walking distance to the Nova Southeastern University Broward campus. So I'm like next door neighbor. So again, I appreciate you including me here. It's great to be here. So a couple things I wanted to mention, and then I'll get to your question. The first thing is that Broward County, I'm going to speak more on a school level, obviously, as a school building principal. We we started with 20%. When we came back to brick and mortar, my school had about 20% of students in person, 80% were home working remotely. We've kind of moved to the point now we're at like 50%, obviously both ways, 50-50. And, we have seen a loss in learning. And the district has identified funds where we're now targeting students who are tier 3 students who are having, academic loss. And we have Saturday camps going on that we've never done before. We have more afternoon camps. And we're just trying to identify time where we could, fill in those gaps. We, as teachers, as educators, we always have an issue with time. So at some point, we do need to realize that we can't invent time. We can't make it up. We're going to try to keep finding places where we could, fill in those gaps, like I said. But we are going to take the assessment, which, by the way, we are still in the middle of. We are completing our assessments in the middle of May, our FSA state assessment. So as we get those results, it's going to be, the starting point, and we're going to take it from that point forward, and just start closing the gaps. I mean, that's what we do. We take students from where they are and move them to where they have to go, and that starting point is going to be a little bit different than it used to be, and we have to at some point accept that. We're still trying to, make up that time where we can, but we do have learning gaps. And once we accept that, once we get that starting point data from, the ongoing data we're taking, and then the starting point from the FSA, then we could start moving forward and closing those gaps for our kids as best as we can.
So Dr. Lewis, given the situation, if you want there, given the situation that Mr. Schwartz just laid out, and the strategy that's being taken in looking at it kind of from a building level, talk a little bit about what that has done for you as a classroom teacher. So how have you had to adjust your own learning methods, learning and teaching methods this year to try to prepare those kids for this assessment period, which is getting ready to launch?
Hi, thank you guys so much for having me here. So definitely I would like to echo what I've heard before. I think across the board, we all saw that there was indeed learning loss. So we had to come up with, ways to make sure, because there's no extra time in the school day. So how to address that. So within the classroom setting, I've definitely used, in addition to scaffolding, front loading, right? So looking at that data and looking to see where are target areas that we really want to hit, and make sure that I'm introducing that content, either using gamification, game-based learning. Technology was my best friend this year. So using the data that we have and coming up with very innovative ways to ensure that we were addressing those areas without having the students feel over-tested or burned out. Another thing was switching from doing only quarterly progress monitoring to monthly progress monitoring, so that we could really quickly identify those areas and provide remediation as needed. As a classroom teacher, I continued differentiating even with the hybrid model. We were still able to do breakout groups and small groups utilizing Zoom breakout rooms. So it was really just shifting the thought process and seeing how could we modify what we did in the classroom setting within this new hybrid component.
Great, thank you. For Dr. Marshall, I'm curious. Given what you're hearing here and the challenges that are being faced, kind of on the ground, and given the position that your company has in the marketplace, how have you had to adjust, in terms of the products and services that you offer to K-12? And you may want to take a couple of minutes just to talk a little bit about that, so that our audience is clear on the kinds of things that you do. But I'm assuming that there is a ripple effect where you have felt this as well, and some of the learning solutions that you have developed need to be adapted. And I'm assuming that's created a lot of stress for your company as well.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. One thing I want to point out first before getting right to your specific question is it's amazing to hear all the different panelists talk about what I think is the most important thing here, and that is being student-centered. I think you heard every one of them talking about starting with meeting where the child is, creating a plan based on that diagnostic. And I think plan is the key word, because I think a lot of people last March were just sort of thrown into a situation for which they didn't have a plan. So I love hearing the very thought out, methodical plans that everyone has talked about just a little bit differently in terms of what they're doing to help students, and that everybody is focused on helping with any learning loss that may have happened. And also, I think Ms. Lewis hit on the whole child, right? Making sure that we keep in mind social and emotional well-being, and trying to use engaging tactics so that, you know, we're recognizing how students are feeling during this process too. So I really appreciated hearing all of that. But you're exactly right. Stride is a learning company. We definitely have had to adjust. There's a large majority of our business that is helping students and families who want to do everything completely online. So we certainly have had a surge in people that want to sign up for fully online, full-time schools. And many of them have come to us saying that it was specifically because of the pandemic, and that they are absolutely planning on going back to brick and mortar when they feel that it's safe to do so. Many of them already have. But in terms of adjusting, you know, our goal is to be a partner to school districts to make sure that they have what they need to feel equipped to serve the students of today. And so that could be anything from training to supplemental content to a technology platform, or all of the above in a full solutions package. What I love, I think the silver lining in all of this though, is that we're truly, back to what I said at the beginning, we're truly looking at each individual student. I'm a parent myself, and my own children had not participated in online learning to any great extent until this all happened. And just watching the way they each engaged very differently in it was pretty amazing to see. I have a freshman in high school, a son who really enjoyed having math in an e-learning situation, but not so much some of the other subjects. So I think it's really forced us in some ways to personalize even more for the individual student than we might have before, where we're actually able to see, oh my goodness, in foreign language, this student benefits from being in a face-to-face situation, but in fill in the blank other course, they might do better working at their own pace asynchronously, you know, and then there may be something else that works best in blended. So I actually like that the silver lining to me is that things have become a lot more personalized and even more student-centered than they were before.
Great, thank you very much. You know, one of the common themes here is this, you know, that was coming out with the transition that we had at one point was this kind of slow integration back into the classroom. And so, you know, understanding that did create a little bit of a delay. Although, like Dr. Marshall, I have 2 kids in high school. My son's a senior. He was very happy to be online. He saw no problem with that at all. He, you know, to sleep in late and do his last year at home. But certainly, you know, it was, you know, it's taxing on everybody. And one of the big ways it was taxing, frankly, was just on the technology end. I know, you know, here I was fortunate enough to be able to up my bandwidth so that we could all be online and learning at the same time. Most families don't have the luxury of being able to do that. And in a district like Dr. Price's, which is more rural, there may be families that don't even have the opportunity or the option to do that. So I'll start with you, Dr. Price, on this. Talk a little bit about the digital divide that we know that exists, you know, among our students. And I'm assuming that became really amplified during this unusual period of the last 12 years or 12 months. Now, what's interesting is that and we'll talk a little bit later on tonight about some of the things that we may have learned that we want to do better or adopt as we move forward. And some of it may be, you know, to actually do some more online learning, because there is an efficiency there that's really useful. However, it does appear as though that gap, that digital divide, does need to be addressed. So talk to me about some of the challenges that your students in particular may have faced, and what do you see as in the future ways that we can fix that and address that digital divide? Andrew, on mute again.
Remember to unmute myself. Okay. I can tell you that when we closed our doors on March 17th, 2020, we thought we were coming back in 2 weeks. We did not realize that we were shutting down schools for the rest of the year. So we gave students paper packets, and we planned for the next 2 weeks and when we're going to be back, and everything was fine. And then 2 weeks later, the governor says, you're not coming back to school. Schools are shut down for the rest of the year, and we had to pivot. So I call it, we were building the plane while we were flying it, because we had no clue about what we needed to do to continue to educate our children from home, or even to learn how to teach and work from home. So we had to do a lot of scrambling for the first few weeks, but we put our minds together and we figured out that we needed to get technology in the hands of our kids. We, of course, made additional packets, but the bottom line is that we needed to get technology to our kids. However, in a rural community, access to the internet is limited. So broadband access is almost non-existent in my community. And so we saw there was a bright spotlight that was put on the digital divide. And we have it, we discovered, we knew we had it, but we didn't know why. And so we immediately figured out a way to get Chromebooks to the kids through a drive-through process. We got on buses and went out to the community to deliver them. We also purchased hotspots to put on buses so we can park the buses in the community and the kids can access the internet. We then also purchased individual hotspots so we can have that checked out to kids. We put antennas outside of our school buildings so parents could drive up and access the internet. So we became very creative in trying to get access to our kids and help them to continue their education. However, we know that there were a large group, I would say over 60% of our kids that we did not reach. They didn't come and pick up the devices and we weren't able to connect with them. So starting the new school year, we knew that we needed to get a device into the hands of every child. And if we truly were going to give our parents a choice, we had to give them access to the internet. So we purchased additional Chromebooks. So when school started, every single child had a Chromebook. We also purchased enough hotspots so that every child could have a hotspot. So when we told parents that they had an option, they truly had an option of either sending their kids to in-person instruction or keeping them at home. So we've been able to close that digital divide with our students, thanks to our school board investing the funding and also some grants that were available through our governor's office that we were able to receive. And so I'm very pleased with the work that we've been able to do. But I can tell you that that first several months when we closed last spring, we were scrambling. We were trying to figure it out, but teachers are amazing, extremely creative, and we figured out how to continue to educate our children from home.
Yeah, well, and that's, I mean, it's remarkable. Some of the things that you've done there are really incredibly creative. The fact remains, right, and you know, and growing up in a rural area, I certainly understand this because even today, I grew up in Maine, and in certain areas there's virtually no internet access. It's very similar to what you experience. What can you do, or can other superintendents or educational leaders do to try to leverage this, really, I mean, viewing this more as an opportunity now moving forward, so that we can better equip, you know, build that infrastructure that would be necessary for online learning. As I said, you know, in looking at, I know in the school that my kids attend, they're looking at actually having a 7th period class online. And the reason they want to do that is it does free up the day. It allows for more flexibility during the day, slightly longer lunch hours. You can start a little later. So it gives a tremendous amount of room now in the schedule to operate because you can offer this additional period. Here in, you know, in the area of Broward that I live in, you know, high-speed internet's not not a problem. For you, it is, and it would be nice, I'm sure, to have similar approaches to, you know, to helping alleviate some of the stress, you know, given that there's a little bit of makeup. So what can be done from an educational leader's standpoint to help lobby or to garner some more support or seek funding to help develop that infrastructure that's needed?
I think, definitely the CARES Act money and the American Rescue Plan funds that we've received have helped tremendously, but we know that that's going to go away in the next 2 years. I think taking advantage of grants that are out there, and then looking at your needs within your school district and prioritizing the funding that you do get from the state, from your local taxes, as well as from your title funds, to determine the best way to leverage the funding to then continue to support that online learning. We've purchased an online platform that supports our state curriculum and those standards. We also have a virtual school that we have implemented so that our students will be able to continue to have the option of learning online if they choose to, whether that be one course or that would be multiple courses, or totally learning from home. So I think looking at the needs within your community, assessing, doing a needs assessment, and then determining what works best for your community. So we did an assessment, and our parents want to have the option of being able to learn from home. And so we have done a lot of professional learning with our teachers to help them to incorporate technology into their lessons. Of course, we know that nothing can replace a teacher in that face-to-face instruction, but we also know that we can leverage technology to support teaching and learning. And so that professional learning is critical to helping us to continue that and also provide those opportunities for our students and our families and our community.
Good. Dr. Green, kind of building off some of those things that Dr. Price was talking about. Talk to me a little bit about in Duval, and maybe in conversations that you've had with maybe other superintendents in the throughout the state. Are there any plans to work to try to lobby for yourselves in conversations with the governor's office or with the state DOE to try to build that digital infrastructure a little bit more? I mean, we know that there are certainly tremendous advantages to having access beyond what we needed to do in the pandemic, and so talk to me a little bit about that. Is this a priority area of yours, and if so, how do you plan to try to move forward with really being able to take advantage of closing that gap?
Well, I have to say we are very fortunate and very blessed in Duval. When we closed down last March, we gave out over 40,000 laptops and over 10,000 hotspots. So our students started last year with every student with a laptop, and every student, if they didn't have internet access, we made sure that they did have internet access. And so what we're doing this year is now we are part of a grant that we are what we call digital deserts. That means it's hard to get internet access. And we are using the school sort of as the beacon. We just got a grant to put what we call mini towers, and we will put it on top of the roof of one of our schools that's in a internet desert, and 2 square mile radius from that school, everyone has access to the internet from that mini tower. So we are trying to partner with our city and some other community organizations to ensure that we cover all of what we call the internet deserts. And so we're working towards that process. And I believe it's because of our relationship with Microsoft. We're probably one of the few districts that when this hit, in 3 days, we were able to turn it. And I think we were the first district that had to go to complete shutdown and go everyone learning remotely. And it was because of our implementation of the innovative educator. So we had over 1,400 teachers already fully trained as experts in Microsoft Teams and using along with Canvas. And these individuals became what we call internet teacher coaches. So everyone was online, everyone was using Microsoft Teams, and these 1,400 teachers were sort of like coaches and teachers who a laptop is just turn on and check email kind of a thing. They were able to help coach those teachers through the process. So for us, as we move forward, our goal is to get as many of our students back into brick and mortar, because we see there is a big difference between the learning remotely, especially for our young children, our elementary children. Secondary, there are some of them that, this is the best thing since sliced bread, and they're good to go. And then there are others that we really need them in school. So our push, if you're talking about statewide, I believe superintendents all know that, hey, everyone needs access now. We need to make sure every student has a laptop and every student has internet access, because Florida, we have other disasters such as hurricanes. We see another avenue to utilize these tools, but I believe pretty much most superintendents believe that we need them back in brick and mortar. And as Dr. Price says, there's nothing that replaces that teacher. But now that we have them back in brick and mortar, we are seeing teachers utilize this when students have to go on quarantine. Hey, they got 10 days worth of lessons already on Microsoft Teams. So those students aren't losing any time, if you will, with instruction. They can get their lessons through Microsoft Teams. We're seeing a lot of teachers recording their lessons in the classroom. And so a student was absent, hey, just go to the recording, hit play in your Teams, and now you can see everything that happened that day. So we see the benefit of technology and how we can now integrate that into our brick and mortar instruction. And so I think that's what most superintendents are starting to focus on, is how we now leverage this and make it even better instruction happening in the classroom.
Yeah, well, it's a good segue for something else that I've been thinking about at this time. I'm gonna start with you on this one, Dr. Lewis. As Dr. Green said, there was this kind of scrambling to come up with solutions. Teachers did that remarkably well. But if you reflect back, there's probably some things that you're doing now or started doing early in the fall that you're like, geez, that actually kind of made my life a little bit easier, right? So as Dr. Green said, I could see where having lesson plans done in advance. I mean, even for things like just a random sick day or whatever, a kid misses class for a doctor's appointment, just to have a place to be able to go to get their class materials is really great. And kids who are chronically ill, I mean, I could see where that would be incredibly useful for them. So talk to me from a teacher standpoint about some of the things that you've learned over the past year that you'll continue to do, things that you never did before, that you started to do now that you've seen as being effective, that you'll continue or build upon because you really believe as though it's a way to actually enhance learning.
Okay, so one of the things that I started during the pandemic was Where You at Class Wednesday. Now, this is an initiative to really address that social and emotional learning portion of the students. One of the things that I struggled with was, even though our students, we knew they had the devices, they weren't showing up to all the classes. And it could have been because of whatever is going on in their home life. So I would do recordings of myself. I did a whole music video of myself, basically saying, where are you at, class? I wonder what you're doing. Do you understand the assignment? And I sent that out to an email to the kids, and they watched it and they commented, oh, I didn't know you could rap, Dr. Lewis. And that's how I got them lured in, right? So then Wednesday, everyone wanted to be there for Where You At Class Wednesday because they knew I would show the video. So having them being able to, I call it basically advertise in my class. And I do my weekly newsletters. And in the newsletters, I say what we're going to be doing for those week, the upcoming week, and I use flyers to promote what we're doing and videos, and having links to lessons that we have completed and posting those assignments online. We use Brightspace, so posting our assignments on Brightspace so it was easier for them to get in. And those are some of the things that I started during the pandemic that I really like. I think it made it so much easier for us. Like mentioned earlier, if a student is ill or absent, they can readily access the assignments at their own pace and complete it.
Great. Mr. Schwartz, I'm kind of curious, same with you, talk a little bit about from a building leader standpoint, some of the things that you've seen now, some of the strategies that you've seen your teachers adopt that you say, gee, you know what, I think we should institutionalize this and really build on it because it really helped with instruction. Give us a couple of examples of things that you'll continue to do and build on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that what's great about this, I mean, to look at the silver lining or to point it out is that we've had all these tools in Broward County for the longest time, but the situation that we've been put in since last March has forced us to take out these tools, learn these tools. Unfortunately, it was kind of on the fly, and like someone said earlier, while we're flying the plane, we're learning and building it. But it has forced us to use those things, and teachers are so much more comfortable with the tools that have been around, for as long as we know, but they just haven't had the opportunity to get into and use it. So I think that's a great thing. I think that at the beginning of this, we saw it as an opportunity. At least that's the way I looked at this, to reinvent education and really kind of change the way we instruct kids and the way we engage with kids. So I think moving forward, I think we're on a great trajectory. Obviously, we do have some time we need to make fill in the gaps, like I said earlier, and kind of catch kids up. But we do have the tools in place now to really transform education. One thing I want to kind of go back to, there's actually two things I want to mention. The first one is from earlier, as far as getting devices into students' hands and making sure everyone is connected to the internet. Part of that also is parent training. I think that we can't miss that, and make sure they need to know how to access and how to use their different instructional tools, because we're sending kids home and we're assigning things, and it would be nice that they're able to support and support their children where they can. And the other part of it is that, as students are coming back, we do have to, like Ms. Lewis said earlier, really focus on the social emotional learning aspect of this. And kids are stressed. They really are. And teachers now more than ever are counselors just as much as they are teachers. And really, looking at, what we can do to, increase sensitivity and look at different trainings and opportunities that we give our educators, because they are playing more roles than they've ever played before, and that adds stress on their plate too. So that's how I feel.
So talk a little bit more about that teacher stress thing, because that does appear to be an issue, right? I mean, teachers were forced into roles that they, for lack of a better term, they didn't sign up for, right? It's, I'm a traditional classroom teacher teaching second grade. All of a sudden now I'm teaching hybrid online, trying to manage the classroom, but then trying to engage kids online. Just a tremendous amount of stress. So talk a little bit, and I'm assuming that stress will continue, right? That's not just going to go away, because now we have this new level of stress, which is we got to get everybody up to speed. And again, especially in those younger grades, and frankly, I think that your school's kind of in that sweet spot, right? That's really where we need to make those gains up pretty quickly. We don't, because they can't fall behind there, because that's going to really delay them for a long time. So talk about anything that you plan to do next year to help build the confidence and the I guess the community back up among your teachers, but then also strategies that you can use to help alleviate some of that stress and maybe get some more resources for them so that they can make their job a little bit less stressful.
Right, of course. I mean, we're really focused on, number one, just taking care of our teachers, letting them know how much they mean to us, how much they mean to their kids, forming great teams that work well together, because no one could do this on their own. We need to support each other. And like you said, just getting the resources and tools in their hands. And if they do, if there's things that they, need extra assistance with, or just are lacking the knowledge or skills, just having opportunities where we could share and build people up. I think someone said something earlier about, I think it might have been Dr. Price. When we have someone on our staff that is exceptional at something or just really knows it well, let them share out. And I have one of my teachers who, every time something comes out that's new, she makes a video of it and she sends it right out to my staff, all my teachers, because, you know, so they can just take the time on their own time to go through it and see where you have to click, where you have to go for this, how you create that. And just that type of sharing does alleviate stress, because then you kind of have, you know, that support there, and you know who to go to if you have a question, and you know where to go if you forget, you forget step 4, you could go back and refer and you know, figure out where to go from there. So I think just helping each other, working together, and just, you know, coming together as a school community.
Great, thank you. So, Dr. Price, I'm curious from your perspective as a superintendent, because I'm assuming this is a significant concern of yours as well. Do you have any plans for, you know, as we move into that new year, things that you can do to help alleviate some of the stress that your teachers are going to be experiencing? I know that there's some there's some discussion, certainly down here in Florida, that we may actually see quite a few teachers leaving the profession. That this is a concern, you know, especially given the fact that they really did deal with a lot, and that stress levels were just incredibly high. So is this a concern of yours? And if so, how are you managing that so that you'll be prepared to, you know, so that your teachers will come in with a good frame of mind and the resources that they need to really do a good job? You're still muted, Dr. Price. We'll get you straight here before the interview.
You gotta get me straight. Coming back for a new school year created a lot of stress for our teachers and our employees, of course. The biggest concern was, am I going to be safe? You know, are you going to be able to keep me safe? And, you know, how are you going to protect me? So we had to do a lot of meetings where we were able to provide information to them about the mitigation strategies that we were putting into place, allow them to ask questions, to share their concerns, to listen to what they were saying. And if we were able to address those concerns, definitely do that. But we made it clear that coming into the school year, we were going to have to be flexible, we were going to have to be nimble, and we would have to be ready to pivot. And that's the way we started. We also put into place an employee assistance program so that employees and family members could call 24/7 if they feel the need to talk to somebody or to get some type of emotional support. We provided 6 free counseling services to our employees. And in addition to that, we put some very strict safety protocols in place to make sure that everybody was safe and that we kept everyone healthy. And we had regular meetings. It was about communication. And so we met often, and we provided information, and we listened to their concerns. And every step of the way, if we were able to address those concerns, then we did it. But it was about reassuring them that we were all working together and that we needed to lean on each other to get through this crisis. So regular meetings, I put into place meeting with my principals every week. And guess what? We're still doing it. We meet every week and we talk about how things are going, because we also have to check on our administrators because they're holding down the fort at the school level. So I wanted to check on our administrators, our district office. I can tell you myself, tremendous amount of stress, but we are the ones that have to be strong and we have to, you know, stay the course. So working together as a team, supporting each other, listening, keeping a pulse, checking on each other on how you're doing, what can I do for you, was critically important. And that was the same thing for our students. So we put in Stand for Harmony and also use Second Step for that social emotional learning for our students. And class meetings, which we had before, became even more important. Having that check-in, not only for our kids that were coming to school in person, but also our virtual kids. But, you know, that communication, listening to each other, being supportive, and extending grace and compassion was key. And so I believe that we just need to stay that course. And as I'm having faculty meetings now, and I said, we're just going to finish the year strong. Never thought that we would be here where we are today, and we have done an amazing job, and we're just going to finish strong. We have 20 days left of school, and we're going to end it on a positive note. But it's about listening. So when I had that faculty meeting this week, it's about tell me what your concerns are. What can we do for you? And all I got was thank you. Thank you for keeping us safe. Thank you for keeping us healthy. So,
there's no question that, that's one of the upsides of going through something like this is if you make it, if you get through it, it's, you certainly that resilience builds a lot of character and strength and confidence, frankly. And so hopefully, and it sounds like you're leveraging a lot of that, and hopefully other administrators do as well, and just kind of keeping that momentum going, because it's not going to be over, and there's going to be a new set of stressors. Thank goodness, at this point, now that we, know more about this disease, we, as you say, understand how to better mitigate it. We have, vaccinations that are really ramping up, and so all that will be in place. But there's still going to be anxiety. I mean, let's face it, there's still going to be kids that are unsure whether they should wear masks to school or not. And, still, teachers that still are unsure how long is this, vaccine going to last, and what, now our kids are getting back together, and, should they get back together? It's going to feel weird. And we have to all be sensitive to that. It's going to take, some significant adjustment. It's not like flipping a light switch where we're all just going to go back to our normal lives. I mean, I consider myself to be fairly well adjusted, and frankly, the thought of just going to a ball game or sitting in a room full of people maskless is weird right now, and it's going to take some time, I think, to get through that.
right. I was going to say, Dr. Mills, that part of what we're doing now is, as we're closing down a school year, we're planning for next school year. So part of the conversation is, as the new CDC guidelines are coming out, our Georgia Department of Public Health will issue guidances, looking at what are those safety protocols that we're going to have in place for next year. And we're going to rely on the science and the health experts to do that, but we're starting those conversations now. What worked? What are some things that we need to change as we move forward? So again, it's having those conversations and listening to then develop a plan to address some of the concerns that you're talking about in that anxiety level and stress level as we plan to start a new school year.
Great. Shifting gears a little bit, I'm going to start with Dr. Marshall on this one. One of the things that I know I struggle with in working in an institution of higher education is what can we do, right? So both in the kind of in the immediate, but then also long-term. I'm going to ask Dr. Green about what we can do in just a second here, but I'm going to start with you looking at for private industry. What do you feel as though your role is now, in your company, and what should the charge be for other organizations? Dr. Price mentioned, Sanford Harmony, like there are other programs like that exist. How can we leverage that, get that more, make this stuff a little bit more mainstream, and then utilize some of these corporate partners that exist to really ramp things back up and take a little bit of that pressure off of teachers.
Can you hear me okay? My mic was looking a little funny. Okay, great.
Yeah.
First, I just want to add some observations. Dr. Lewis, I love that you shared what you shared, because I think that's completely an example of meeting students where they are. I feel like we've got a little bit of a TikTok, YouTube generation, and you doing that is perfect. I also want to echo what everyone else is saying and kind of hit on what you were just talking about, Dr. Mills. I think the magnifying glass that was put on equity and access, we cannot take that off, right? We cannot let that go away just because we get through this particular situation that we're in, because I think it did make us all wake up a little more and realize it was a way bigger issue than we even thought. So I think it's hugely important to keep that focus and to not forget that, and to make intentional efforts to have that outreach to your community, so that, bigger than your community, bigger than your state level, but at a national level, we're creating partnerships that make it so that people are not left without the things that they need in order to survive a situation like this. Because I think what we've learned is, expect the unexpected. Just because we get through this particular pandemic doesn't mean that something else isn't going to come along that's going to show us those inequities again. So I think it's hugely important that we do that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is, in the same way that we saw some students unexpectedly thrive in a virtual education environment, some of our teachers did too. And so I think it was Dr. Price that talked about the lines of communication and keeping those open. You need to talk to your people and find out what they liked, what they didn't like, what they were good at and why, and not only just share those best practices, but leverage your people that are talented in that way, because you're going to have teachers that may want to continue in a fully online environment, and that is much easier than having one teacher try to straddle a hybrid scenario where they're doing part of the day face-to-face and part of the day online. That's pretty impossible to do very well, especially when you're just thrown into it unexpectedly. So I think it's important to remember that, and then leaning on the people that have been doing this for a long time. We've got lots of companies out there that have lived in this space, in the virtual learning space, and the longer runway you have and the more planning you can do so that your staff is completely trained ahead of time, the better off you will be. I mean, Dr. Green and Dr. Price talked about the extensive plan that they had, and the training and the progress monitoring and all those things that we know to do as good educators. That needs to be done for training our teachers as well, and our parents, I think, that you said, Dr. Schwartz, because some of this is new. Our students pick up things sometimes technologically a lot quicker than some of their parents do. But then I would also point to higher ed too, right? We should be thinking about degree programs that focus on online learning. We know many people take advanced degrees in that form as an online learner asynchronously. Again, spreading that best practice and the forums and the mechanisms and the platforms which those work best, all the way from kindergarten through higher ed. I just think that this has also forced companies, ed tech companies, to be more innovative, be more automated, improve their ease of use. I mean, it's kind of shown the spotlight on all of us in how we can get better, which to me is exciting because I think it will make us all better, as long as we don't forget and don't push this aside as a one-time occurrence, because I do think, I think online learning is going to continue to be needed. Maybe not everyone for every subject in every way, every day, but there's a place for it. And the better we can get at that, I think the better we will serve our students.
Great. Thank you. Dr. Green, so talk to me a little, let's build on some of the stuff that Dr. Marshall talked about there. Thinking about, now the future and I'm talking beyond next year, I'm talking, in the next round of teachers that you'd hire. What can we as institutions of higher education start to do to start to rethink our teacher education preparation programs so that we can better equip teachers to be able to come into this classroom that is going to be transformed. One of the things that we know kind of from a systems theory standpoint is that that the education system has changed and will likely never go back to exactly the way that it was before. I think that we're going to see the classroom look a little bit different. So talk about what you expect from us in higher ed to do to try to help you as you move forward in preparing educational leaders and building, principals and teachers to be able to adopt to this new environment.
Wow, that's a loaded question, because one of the things we really want higher ed to do is it doesn't matter what we do differently in education, it still does boil back to the teacher and how that teacher can facilitate learning to ensure that all students have access to an education that allows them to grow and then get to achievement. Because we know every student doesn't come into the door at the same place. They all come at different places. And our highly effective teachers know how to meet every single one of those students where they are and how, and I think I said the word, and then Dr. Lewis said the word, scaffold them to the standards that our state anyway says that our students are supposed to be able to master. And so pedagogy is still vitally important, and that they have a strong pedagogy. We can always train them on some new way we're doing something. Just like I said, we had 14 100 innovative educators, and they were the ones who went out and trained all the teachers on how to use Microsoft Teams and how to use the resources within Microsoft Teams. But if I have a teacher who has very weak pedagogy, it doesn't matter if I can train them on how to use Microsoft Teams. If they still can't impart what they need to teach the students, and then students be able to grasp that knowledge and be able to use that knowledge for whether it's teaching them how to read or teaching them how to fix, if it's CTE, fix an engine, then I'm still struggling as a school district to support our students. So for us, still some of the things that have been tried and true, we still need higher ed to do it for us, and that teachers come in with that strong pedagogy, understanding about effective classroom management strategies, understanding about equity, implicit bias. These are the things that teachers are facing, at least in my school district. We are, just like Broward, a large urban school district, and for Duval County, 43% of our students are African American. Yet only, I believe, 20% of my teachers are African American. So my students are generally interacting with a teacher who is not of the same ethnicity as they are. And they need to know that that teacher understands where they are coming from, understands their own implicit bias. And then once you understand it, you now can have an opportunity to alter it, change it, fix it, but find a way to interact with that young person differently. So for me, it isn't so much about the technology, it isn't so much about different ways that we can now educate students. It's about coming back to the basics. You're having strong pedagogy, understanding who you are teaching, and understanding yourself as an individual, and being able to connect with students of different ethnicities.
Great, thank you. That's a great response. I really appreciate that. Shifting gears a little bit here, and I'm gonna get this last question out here, and then we'll turn it over and see. I know that there are some questions from our participants tonight, so we'll get to those as well. But for Mr. Schwartz, I want to direct this question to you first, and then Dr. Lewis. One of the things that I'm starting to see a little bit more of is the talk of summer school. That that looks like there may be a slight increase in the number of kids that go to summer school, and even for those that are not, this is something that a lot of parents are kind of struggling with in terms of what they can do to help get their kids up to speed. So talk a little bit about that from many of us here are parents, and I'm sure that we have some participants that are, but what are some of the things that you can share that, as educators that are viewing this tonight, that they can share with families that maybe have some of this anxiety, things that they can do to help get their kids ready to go back to school. So how can parents and communities develop and support so that we do start to push them ahead and get them caught back up again?
Of course, and like you alluded to, Broward County is, I'm hearing some feedback. I don't know if that was mine or not. But Broward County is ramping up their summer programs, and we're expanding, and there's more locations, and we're going to service more students than ever before as a county. At my school, we just did a kind of little informal survey, and almost 100 of our students, our families, indicated that they were interested in a summer school experience. And we're excited about that. And we do know that there's some, hesitancy with that. But if families have the time and they want to send their children, it's going to be a great opportunity for them to start closing some of those gaps that we spoke about all night. So that's going on. But for those that aren't willing to do that because they might have whatever going on in the summertime, I think all schools, I know mine does this every year, but we send out something for them to work on. We call it in my school Take 5. And it's just 5 things that they could work on that are very, simple instructions, things that they could work on to help them get it ready for the next grade level. Or in this year, it'll probably be revamped so that they could start strengthening some of those skills maybe that they're at in their current grade level. So I think that any opportunity that anyone can find, I think schools are going to provide that to families. And I know in Broward County, like I said, we are ramping that up. The summer experience, it's going to be in person. It's all in person. I know it was, up until this point, it's been a choice, but all of it's going to be in person learning. So we're excited for that. And I think, it's a personal decision. I think each family is going to decide how, if it's the right thing for them. But I think that's kind of where we're at.
Great. That's a major commitment on the school's part as well to offer that in person. So for Dr. Lewis, talk to me a little bit from your standpoint. If you had a concerned family in front of you, what would be the kinds of things that you would tell them to do? Would you encourage summer school? What are some of the things that you would do to try to help these families so that they can get their kids ready for the upcoming school year?
Sure. So one of the things that I've done is really show what we're doing in person, share videos of what we're doing, share pictures, things like that, so that the parents and also my virtual learners can actually see that we are learning in a safe learning environment. And that has actually helped with a lot of our kids returning back on campus. Now, as far as promoting summer school, I do speak frankly with my parents about where their child is, and the reality of not only the well-known summer learning loss, right, but now it's coupled with maybe that gap that was caused by the pandemic. So I understand that it is a parental decision. However, I do encourage my parents, based on what data I have, to bring their students to summer school or to engage in some other learning activity. Our local libraries offer programs. Just make sure that kids are still actively engaging in learning during the summer period, right? There are community services that offer free tutoring. So just making sure that learning is taking place. I do believe in getting that mental break. So I'm all for, taking a vacation during the summer, but just making sure that if they're not participating in summer school, that they are utilizing whatever summer resources and tools we provided them with, or utilizing whatever community resources are available to them.
Great, thank you. All right, we're going to go to a couple of questions that have come into the chat. If anybody else in attendance has questions, I encourage you to type those in now. We'll try to get to as many as we can. This first one is directed specifically for Dr. Green and Duval County. So Jasmine Lassane is asking, for Duval County, how do you expect to address the potential coming mental health challenges that students may face post-COVID?
Actually, we've been addressing those mental health challenges all school year. We just had yesterday our mental health conference that was held for over 22,000 high school students. It was done virtually, so students went through the mental health conference in their classroom. Again, here's an example of taking technology and utilizing it in a way that we've not done before. We always hold in May our mental health conference for our high school students, and generally high schools would select students to send to the conference. And this year, because of technology, we were able to have the mental health conference with all of our high school students. And then today was the mental health conference for our teachers. And once again, we were able to host it for all 7,800 of our educators if they choose to they could do it before school, during their lunch period, during planning periods, or after hours, engage in a mental health conference for them. So as we have been preparing for next school year, we have put together what we call the lunch bunch. So our principals now are meeting with just small groups of students every month, having lunch with them, and finding out, okay, what's happening, what's going on, being able to really talk to students in an informal way and listening to their concerns has been very popular. And so now the principals are talking about now every group of students want to meet with them during lunch bunch, but the purpose was to sort of be that on Facebook, that quiet friend. You know, as a parent, when my son had a Facebook page, I'd go get my sister to join his page and she would tell me what was happening. So having these lunch bunch meetings, the kids would tell them what's happening, what's going on out there, or they might find out, hey, so-and-so is having a rough time. So now that principal can connect that student to a guidance counselor. So some of our principals have now started they're getting their counselors. Okay, you need to have a lunch bunch so that counselors could meet with small groups of students. And again, it's just once a month during lunchtime that they have this lunch bunch. To extend that, now I'm having quarterly, quote unquote, lunch bunch meetings with a group of students. And we had our first one. It was done virtually. So I was meeting with 9 high schools, and each school had about 5 to 6 students present. And the students could talk to me about things they wanted to see different on their high school campuses. So one of the things that came out of that was that, you know, we know that we have access to a mental health therapist on our campus, but we don't want to be seen going to the mental health counselor's office. We don't want to let other people know that we're going to talk to this person. So that led to us investigating, maybe we use teletherapy with our Duval homeroom students. That's therapy that happens by Microsoft Teams with the student at home, but the parent is home. So now we're trying to figure out, well, how can we give our high school students access to teletherapy so that they could have conversations with a therapist in a quiet place, somewhere where they don't feel like other students would know what they're doing. Another thing is they wanted to know, how come we couldn't provide the resources for mental health therapy by using the scan code? So now we're creating cards, put the scan code, their phone, and now they have that information inside their cell phone. So these are some of the things we're doing as a way to helping students with mental health. Our students this year have expressed themselves like no other school year. I have had student walkouts. We are going through school renaming. I have students that have come to school board meetings and they are speaking during public comments and they are being articulate, passionate. And so we just decided we're going to embrace this. We're going to embrace it and start meeting with our students and letting them know that they can talk to us. We now have students putting on performances, what they're expressing themselves through art, through theater, dance, finding ways to let us know, hey, we need to be heard. And so we are now hearing them. You might have regretted asking me that question because it's definitely been a school year and one that we have decided, you know what, we're just going to embrace it and listen to our students, and they are now guiding us to the things that we think this is opening up for our students, and they are now just taking hold of it and really exciting things are coming from them. One last example, this summer we're having a high school writing club that students are going to write curriculum on African American, either individuals or events that are historic in Jacksonville. These students are going to write this curriculum for 2 groups. For our 4th graders through Florida history, it will become part of the Florida history curriculum, and our high school literature class of this curriculum. We're going to pay these students a supplement. We are partnering with our University of North Florida. Our social studies and English teachers are co-teaching And once these students have completed the curriculum, we are going to publish it and use it in our classrooms. That came from students voicing they want to know more about their own history, and we need to ensure that we are sharing it, not just with those students, but all of our students of Duval County.
Very well, thank you. And as you were speaking, the participant that asked the question said that she appreciated your response and loved the direction that you're headed in Duval County. So great, thank you. They're obviously in good hands there. This next question, I'll pose this one to either Dr. Price or Mr. Schwartz. David Ring is asking, has the pandemic and COVID-19 raised questions about overall school safety? And if so, what new risks are school systems facing?
I could start. I'm just going to pull the question up, so I just make sure there we go. So obviously, I mean, it's no secret what kind of risks have, developed. And, as we've learned more about COVID-19 and we're listening to CDC guidelines and their district guidelines, we're figuring out ways to, to properly mitigate any, any risks. So, at my school, and pretty much at all schools that I'm aware of, we've, put things in place that are, definitely different than the traditional. We have, students still sit in hallways when they, wait to go into their class in the morning. I'm in elementary school, but we have tape on the wall every 6 feet, and students sit every 6 feet. We have, bathrooms that are assigned just to specific classrooms so that, if we do have a COVID case, it's easier for us to contact trace. Now, with all that said, all those changes that we make, the most important part, and, someone said this earlier, is just communication. Our families, when we came back to the brick and mortar, we made sure that they knew every single step from the second the student stepped out of the car or their bus until they got back into the car or their bus at the end of the day. What to expect, what the procedures will be, or are, what they are. But I think just communicating them and just being open and honest and sharing that, we're going to put all these things in place and we still have a risk. I mean, that the COVID-19 is still there. So we could put in all the measures that we could think of. We could follow it to a T. We could communicate it, and we still might have something come up. It's something, someone might come in with COVID, and we might have someone. We have, knock on wood, we haven't had any transmission within the school, in my school in particular, but it could happen because that's just the nature of this virus. So yes, it is a new risk. I don't think it's opened up any other risks. I think all the risks are associated with COVID. We still do our code red drills and our fire drills and all those type of drills, but I don't think COVID has added to that risk in particular.
Great, thank you. Anything that you can think of that Mr. Schwartz did not cover in terms of that mitigation of risks for the future?
We did, and we still are doing, and have implemented many of those mitigation strategies. I was going to say, we installed water bottle fillers, shut down our water fountains and put water bottle fillers. We did an ionization system and installed that. We purchased foggers so that we could clean the classrooms and the buses. We did desk shields. You name it, we did it, and it worked because we've been able to keep everyone safe. We limited the number of visitors coming into our schools. So I think that helped to reduce the exposure. And we put cameras outside of our schools so that we were able to identify who's going to come into our buildings and how many people could come in at one time. We reduced the number of events that we had at our schools that were face-to-face and we went virtual. So there were a lot of things that we put into place, but again, I don't think that there was an increased threat to safety. And just like Mr. Schwartz, we're still doing, our lockdowns, our intruder drills, our fire drills, our evacuation drills. I think everybody has been safe. No big concerns have been expressed other than what I said at the beginning of the school year with how are you going to keep us safe?
Right. Well, as we wind down, just a couple other quick things, a quick comment actually from John Chase. And Dr. Chase is saying, and it's a good point, that when Starlink, which is part of the SpaceX launch, is operational, rural communities will have 100% internet access. Partnerships with SpaceX may be worth pursuing by NSU or others akin to Microsoft partnerships. I think that's actually true. And I think that we do need to start exploring some of these opportunities that are presented to us so that we can help in bridging that digital divide. Well, as we round out here on about 90 minutes, we'll get ready to sign off. But before we do, just a couple of quick things. Actually, first for Darren, our person kind of behind the scenes here, there was a comment about when the webinar recording would be available and where that would be available. I don't know, Darren, if you know the answer to that. If you could just chime in real quick.
I do not. It's usually posted in a couple days, but I don't know where they'll post it. It'll either be a YouTube link or on the college's website.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking is we will get that up on our website. Katie, go ahead if you have a comment as well.
Hi, everybody. I am the assistant director here for alumni engagement at Nova Southeastern University for the Fischler College of Education. But I wanted to let you know this is being recorded and we will post it on our alumni website. And we will also email a link to all of our attendees tonight. So you will have that in your inbox and it will be available to you online.
Okay, great. And one of our other administrators just chimed in that we're also going to post this on the Fischler College of Education YouTube channel. And before we sign off, I do want to just kind of plug, if you don't follow us on YouTube and on Facebook, I would encourage you to do so. We do events fairly routinely, weekly, on a variety of topics. We just had one actually on implicit bias that one of our faculty did. Dr. Green had touched on that in her response earlier. We had a faculty member that did a really great session on that just about a week ago. So we do have events that occur that really run the gamut. Part of one of the School of Criminal Justice is also part of the College of Education, and they've done some really interesting discussions lately, looking at issues with policing in the community and some of the issues there. They get a lot of really high-powered folks that are able to come in and speak to some of those issues, which are obviously major concerns today as well. So obviously these things are free and open to whoever wants to attend. So we certainly encourage you to check those events out. And then just finally, I do again want to thank our participants. Again, these are incredibly busy individuals, as I said earlier. I know, I'm fairly busy, but I'm definitely not a K-12 school person, and I feel like they're kind of on call a little bit more than we are in higher ed. And to be focused like this for an hour and a half, I think is a challenge, quite frankly, especially at this time of the year. So we pay them in smiles and sunshine, and that's about it. They did this out of the goodness of their heart and their commitment to education and to our college as well. So again, thank you so much for graciously giving us your time and your expertise tonight. I know it's difficult to get access to individuals like you. So we really do appreciate it on behalf of all of the attendees here tonight. Well, that is going to be it. So again, I wish all of you a great rest of the springtime as we enter summer. Hopefully we can all relax a little bit and start getting slowly back to normal. We're always here for you in the College of Education at Nova Southeastern University. If there's anything that you ever need in your schools, as one of the largest schools of education in the country, we certainly think that we can help you out. So definitely let us know. But I wish you all a great evening. Thank you for attending, and hopefully we'll see you again soon in one of our future presentations. All right, take care, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.